Welcome to the Inside Carolina podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. It is the Game Plan podcast sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. With the game plan means the experts are in the room. I'm just the host. Again, it's Tommy Ashley. That's Jason Staples on your screen. If you're watching on YouTube, that is Greg Barnes. If you're watching on YouTube at the bottom, or at least maybe, I'm not sure how they're organized. That's how they look on mine. It's already going to be that kind of show tonight. So I'm going to start with Greg and let the smart guys talk. Greg, Carolina coming off a loss at Virginia Tech. Georgia State's coming in. Georgia State got killed by Army. I don't know how much you can get from either game, but Carolina's got some issues to fix. My general question to you before we get into the nuts and bolts is this the weekend Carolina can find some of the answers they're looking for?
It better be. I mean, if not, it's going to be a long season, and our preseason predictions are going to be way off. Georgia State, Sean Elliott's done a good job with that program. It's a quality team for their level. But this is one that if North Carolina is a legitimate top 25 team, like we all think, North Carolina should be able to get healthy in terms of confidence. They should be able to get some things working, clean up some of the communication issues that plagued them in Blacksburg. And most importantly, get a lot of those young guys more reps so they feel good about themselves and they're not having to play against really stout Virginia Tech cornerbacks or physical guys up front or some of the defensive ends that Virginia Tech threw at North Carolina last week. So this is not a game that North Carolina can take lightly. I mean, this is not a Western Carolina type game, but this is a game that North Carolina should handle their opponent quite well. But more than anything, Tommy, you have to come into this game and you have to execute better. You have to understand what your mistakes were. You have to learn from those mistakes, and you have to show that you are the team that you said you were coming into the year, that you are that top 10 team, and you have to execute in that manner. And that's about confidence. It's execution. It's the coaching staff kind of doing what they need to do. So more than we can talk about Georgia State for sure, but this is about North Carolina. This is about them kind of stepping out of the ash from Blacksburg and really doing what they need to do to kind of get things started back right. I mean, we saw it happen in 2015. They came off that bad loss against South Carolina. We didn't know exactly what was going to take place. They had a good week of practice, which they've had this week, and then they kind of got things rolling. And I think all expectations were for that to happen for North Carolina this week.
Man, just imagine if they were playing Elon, the Ash reference. Yeah, we're going good here. Get Jason giggling. Jason, something that I thought about, one of the questions I pondered as I did my daily walk is building confidence versus having confidence versus building confidence. All football players generally have some confidence, but can you legitimately build confidence if you don't actually do what you're supposed to do, if you don't actually execute? How does that work in the football mind? These guys have come off the Virginia Tech game. They didn't play well. Some of them did not play well, especially on, say, the offensive line. So how are those guys, where's that mindset as far as their confidence going into this game?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that you can have and build a sort of confidence even when you're not doing things right, but it's not the kind of confidence that's going to last or stand up to when things aren't going well. Lots of people actually have success when they're not doing things the right way. But then what happens is when you come to a time where you actually have to do it the right way in order to succeed, your confidence is going to break down because you're not used to having that. So yeah, you can have that, but I think the main sort of direction of your question here is that this is a team that has a number of younger players that need to experience some success doing the right things in order to really be sort of liberated from the thinking that they're doing on the field. That's really so much about confidence. You hear people talking about confidence and the importance of confidence, and it's so important for sports. But one of the things that you really have to think about, what makes confidence and what makes it so important in team sports, is that it's what allows you to function without that extra sort of executive function governor on you, so that you're basically able to respond and react rather than having to think, respond, and then react, where you're always going to be a beat or two slow. The guy who's done this 150 times and he's done it right can finally go, just, throw it to me this way, and that's how I'm going to catch it. There's no, or you've repped this 1,000 times in practice, where when this corner bails and I'm running this route, then I adjust my steps and I sit down here. I'll give you a good example of this from my limited experience in college football. I think this would have been my freshman year. Might have been my sophomore year, but I think it was my freshman year. We got toward the end of the spring, and yeah, this definitely would have been my freshman year. We got toward the end of the spring, and we'd had so many receiver injuries, as often happens in spring. You especially in those days, spring was very, very physical. We actually had shirts done of I for the guys that finished all 15 spring practices that didn't miss a practice, because that was a badge of honor with how physical our spring practices were. But we were down so many wide receivers that somehow for one scrimmage, I found myself running with the starters. That felt pretty good for the moment, but there was a moment in that scrimmage where there was a corner blitz over top of me, and I knew that I was supposed to route adjust on that, and that I was supposed to turn it into a little hitch route. I knew that. And yet when I saw the corner had disguised it well enough that I didn't see it right away. Like, I didn't see it pre-snap. I didn't know for sure that he was going. And when he left at the snap, I was getting ready to run another route. And then I knew to sit down, but at the same point, there was enough going on in my head of like, I'm thinking through what I have to do at this moment. And I did the right thing, but I also faded a little bit in my route because I was just not ready to stick the foot in the ground and hit that route the way that it needed to be crisply. And the ball ended up a little bit low because of that, because I was a yard deeper than I needed to be, having drifted. The quarterback threw it just a little bit low, and I ended up dropping the football. Had my opportunity to have a catch running with the ones against the ones and blew it. Why? Because I was a true freshman and really didn't have any idea what I was doing. Even when I did have, I could draw it up for you on the board, no problem. But the confidence of having repped that 100 times in that situation where that guy disappears and all of a sudden I know I just sit down here, no problem, and just catch it and go, that wasn't there yet. It would have taken a few more reps for me to be that confident in it. And I hadn't had those reps. That's what you're trying to get at. And yeah, that can only really be built through actual reps. Now, some guys get that a little faster than others. Some guys are a little bit more cerebral and think through it longer. Other guys, just are blessed to be, they rep it 3 or 4 times and they're already getting it. This is one of the reasons why some freshmen play a little bit earlier than others, is because those are the guys that for some reason they're just wired to be able to do it. They don't think about it. They just, that's what I'm supposed to do. And they can just do it. Those savants can play earlier. I was not one of those savants, even though I could draw it all up on the chalkboard. It takes reps. That's the kind of thing that you're trying to develop with the confidence. And it takes doing it right and knowing like, okay, that's what I did the last time, and not even having to think that's what I did the last time. It becomes muscle memory of a sort. It's built-in memory so that you're operating by that instead of any other thing. And that's when you can play fast and when you can actually play well.
Greg, the coach's challenge this week, building those young guys' confidence, but correcting some older guys' mistakes, specifically on the offensive line. I mean, we're not going to see a huge rotation or sea change at any position. And there's some questions that have popped up on social media that I want to ask you guys. But how does the coaching staff get, Mack Brown talks about correction day, and they do all this stuff all week, but they got to see it in the game. How do you you measure against a Georgia State team who is decent? How do you fix those in live action versus getting other guys reps? You follow what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah.
Is how do you make that balance to sort of accomplish everything you're trying to accomplish in a game?
Well, you go into this game, your goal is to win the game, right? And so you're gonna attack it just like you attacked Virginia Tech. You're not going to go into this game thinking, okay, well, this is a game we should win. We're going to split up reps like this. Now, you probably have an idea of if we get ahead and we're up by 4 touchdowns going into the fourth quarter, we're able to make sure that these guys get a bulk of the reps. But what will happen is, what North Carolina does is the day after games, they'll sit down, have a film study session, and they go out on the field and they do walkthroughs in which they do the corrections. And they make sure the guys see it on film, and then they get to experience it kind of in the walkthrough of understanding, okay, I saw it on film. Now I've got to kind of physically go through it. And it's just kind of a mental rep for them. But as they come into this game, it's about the starting offensive line, and it's about the wide receivers understanding Emory Simmons, Antoine Green, understanding what they need to do better and really trying to execute that on game day. And then if you're able to build a lead, then you can say, okay, Jahvari Ritzie played a handful of snaps. He looked pretty good in Blacksburg. Kamon Rucker only played 5 snaps, but he looked good. He got a sack in the 5 snaps that he played. So you're going to maybe work those guys in a little bit more to get them some more experience. And then if you build a big lead, then you can start doing some more wholesale changes and getting more guys reps. But you're not at a point yet where you're thinking just about getting young guys opportunities. You got to make sure your blues and your whites, your 2 deep, is clicking on all cylinders, and that they feel better about themselves. They're executing better, all those kind of things. And if you can't get those things done, especially early, that's a problem, and you're going to keep those guys in there a lot longer. But if everything goes according to plan, you come out, you execute a lot better, you look good, you build a big lead. That allows a lot of these younger guys to get more opportunities. Coaches, they have it in the back of their mind, right? But it's not like fans think, where fans are like, well, just put all the freshmen in, the 5-star guys in the second quarter, just let them play. And they'll figure it out. It's not quite that easy.
That's where I was going with you, Jason. Is, the fans are like, should they switch up the scheme? Should they run 4-3 instead of 3-4 or whatever on defense and all that? I mean, it's about perfecting what you do. Jason, offensively, we'll stay on that side of the ball. Sam Howell needs to play better. I don't think there's any question. It's all connected. But let's talk about the wide receivers a little bit. You broke down some plays, and it's one of the most fascinating things for me to look at on Inside Carolina is your breakdowns. So how does that translate week to week when these guys get corrected, they see their corrections, and how much of the mistake did you see, a loss of technique against Virginia Tech, can be corrected in a week? Or how much of it was nerves in the first game of being on the big stage? How does that progress for guys like Emory Simmons and Antoine Green, even Garrett Walston, who could have played better against Virginia Tech? We can't talk about Josh Downs doing anything else. I mean, he's going to have 1,200 to 1,500 yards like I told y'all he would in the preseason. So
lean on that one, Tommy.
I'm going to lean on that.
Yeah,
I got
lean on that
right.
preseason prediction. Yeah.
One right. But yeah, how does it work for your skill guys like that, Jason?
Well, I mean, again, it varies a little bit with players on how quickly you can make corrections, how quickly things take. I'm confident that these have been a point of emphasis. Some of the things that I pointed out have been a point of emphasis this week. Now, is that something that changes the next time that you're on the field in that situation? When, if you look at Emory Simmons, you go back to the Notre Dame game last year when he mossed the Notre Dame corner in the end zone. He used the technique that he used, the same jump ball technique of just going up and grabbing it like a basketball that he used against Virginia Tech that ultimately cost him a touchdown. So, he's already had some success with that. And odds are this is the way he's done it ever since ever since he played wide receiver, because he was always bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody else. And you can just go up and do that. Again, the point of the problem is once you go against players that are as good as you or even better than you have to actually do it differently in certain scenarios and use technique to win. Sometimes it's as quick as, well, I finally am seeing on film. I finally experienced that this didn't work for me in this scenario. And yeah, we've been working on this in practice for years, and coach has been requiring that I do it this way for years, but that's in drills. And every time we get into the game, I do it differently. I just do it my way. Now, maybe I trust the other way. Maybe if you've repped it enough and, you get in that situation, maybe there's just that extra thing that clicks to do it the right way the next time. Maybe. Other times it just takes longer. I mean, it's sort of like a swing change in golf. I mean, you can do it on the range for weeks on end, and then you get out there on the course and all of a sudden you're swinging exactly like you did before the swing change, or worse, you're kind of stuck in between them and you're in the trees most of the round.
Because it matters.
Listen to Greg. Look, you have made Greg Barnes light up. We already talked about his future PGA Tour caddy.
And then you get it to where you can finally do it on the course. Oh man, finally, the range has gotten to the course. Everything's great. And then you play in a tournament, and tournament golf is a whole different thing from playing on the course in a practice round. And so then all of a sudden you're doing fine, swing change is good. And then that seventh swing of the round, all of a sudden you feel your body like it's an octopus falling out of a tree, doing exactly the opposite thing that you're supposed to be doing. And you feel it on the downswing and you're going inside. You're having this horrified no as you're swinging, and the ball goes into the trees once again. This is exactly how this works when you're trying to learn these new techniques and do things the right way at different points. When you've had a lot of success doing it the other way, it happens. So I'm curious to see how quickly some of these things can change. I'm confident that a guy like Emery Simmons and a guy like Antoine Green, that those guys are capable of turning this around and having a ton of success this year on the outside. I'm confident of that. And I know that they're well coached. So it's just a matter of certain things clicking when the tournament round is going and not when you're in practice. And this week is a great opportunity for that, because you have it happen the right way a couple times in games. And that starts to seal that in to where now your body's convinced that you're actually doing it the right way. And that can be, sometimes it's just a matter of getting it to work for one game. And then for the rest of your life, you can actually do it right every time. So it's tricky.
It is. So staying on the offensive side of the ball before we take a break, Greg, I'm going to ask our first Twitter question. Chapway Entertainment. Should UNC change their running scheme based on the personnel at running back to a more power-based scheme and not so much zone, utilizing double tight sets for running game and pass? What is the likelihood of Phil Longo and Mack Brown changing the approach to the running game after one bad day in Blacksburg? And I don't even think it was a bad day when you're talking about the running game. But
no, I mean, you're going to have bad games. You're going to have games where things don't work the way you want them to, where there are mistakes made kind of across the board, all these things. That happens. But Phil Longo is in Chapel Hill because he runs something similar to what Lincoln Riley does at Oklahoma, which is what Mack Brown wanted, was an air raid passing attack blended with a power running game. You're not going to see many two tight end sets in what Phil Longo wants to do. I mean, we've talked a lot about the tight end not getting a lot of run in the offense anyway the last couple of years. The idea of what Phil Longo wants to do is to space you out horizontally, which is what Larry Fedora was good at, but also vertically. And that's what this is based upon. And then you add in some pulling schemes for your running attack, and you get some power in play there. That's what Phil does. That's what Mack Brown wants. That's not going to change especially after one game. It was a bad game. I mean, let's just acknowledge that's what it was. They'll learn from it. They'll get better. The scheme's not changing.
Yeah. The question I asked, I said I was going to ask social media questions. I did. Good answer. Let's talk about Johnny. Go ahead before I do my favorite read.
I'm going to add more here.
I might let you do the Johnny T-shirt read after you add. Go ahead.
So I think part of the problem here is that this question misunderstands some things about the difference between zone, scheme, and power. So first of all, Longo runs the heck out of power. A lot of the runs that they ran against Virginia Tech were power O. I mean, the power run play. It's what it's called. It's power. And not zone stuff. They ran some zone. They also ran power and counter, which are gap blocking schemes. So it's not like they need to transition from more zone running scheme to power based scheme, because they already run a large amount of power. And double tights, of course, has nothing to do with whether you're running zone or power. In fact, a lot of teams that run primarily zone are double tight teams. The NFL, when those teams go to double tight, they're running some sort of zone or in many cases duo, which is a version of zone that kind of brings some power, some concepts over from power, but it's still zone. Basically, they're running zone or duo when they're running two tight sets as often as not, rather than power. So I think there's a misconception a lot of times that putting bigger personnel on the field means you're running more power-based schemes as opposed to zone-based schemes, which are, finesse for when you've got more receivers on the field. And none of that's the case. And like Greg said, your offense is your offense. If you want to see a bad football team, find a team where the coaches change the scheme week to week. The best football teams, the only competent football teams are teams that have a clear identity of who they are. They have well-defined schemes that are what they run. And at most they add a wrinkle here or there based on opponent to what they already have in. So it's based on their scheme on what they already do. If you're changing week to week, you're going to be a bad team.
Indeed. Now let's talk about Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. They are sponsors of the Inside Carolina podcast. Great friends of the Inside Carolina premium subscribers, because you get 10% off their order. You got football gear. They got plenty of the jerseys. They got plenty of swag. You can get anything you want. I'm sure they'll probably be around in the Bowls lot this weekend. And you get 10%, but they also have basketball. And they've got tennis and men's and women's soccer, anything you could ever want at the store and online. Support them. They support us. And like I said, go to the premium board and get your code to get that 10% off. They'll bring it straight to your door if you need it, or you can visit them on Franklin Street. Take another short break. Let the national guys pay the bills. We'll be right back. Game Plan Podcast, Georgia State version. All right, I'm going to come to Jason. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. We talked about getting guys more reps on the defensive line this week. I do think we need to see Kamen Rucker more. I'd like to see maybe Clyde Pender get some more reps, whatever they need to do to get those guys in there. But I'm going to ask a question. Jared McCullen on Twitter asked, should there be more rotation at linebacker? Same type question I asked Greg about the offensive scheme. What's the chances of having more rotation, especially at inside linebacker for Jay Bateman's defense? I'd say it's next to that number you see on the screen.
Yeah, my answer to that question is no. No, there should not be more of a rotation at linebacker. And you want me to elaborate on this, so I will. The linebacker position on defense, that inside linebacker position, is like the quarterback position on offense. As a general rule, if you have a rotation at the quarterback position, what does that mean?
You don't have any.
That means you don't have a stud quarterback. It's like asking, well, should we see more of, Criswell and May? Maybe we need to, have Sam Howell take more breaks during the game. I just don't think that's going to really be conducive to winning.
That question's coming. Just to let you know.
Yeah. So you want to have the guys who are holding the glue to the defense. You want those guys on the field as much as possible. And as a rule, that's just not a position where there's going to be a ton of rotation. Now, sometimes you're going to get this or that guy in situationally, like maybe, it's a third down situation and you've got a better coverage guy for a matchup that you like, and you get that guy in there if they're not in hurry up, no huddle. It's possible. But as a rule, if you've got decent linebackers, if you've got quality linebackers on the field, you want to leave those guys on the field until they, tap out. And generally speaking, those guys aren't going to tap out. So it just is what it is. And in this kind of game, you're going to see young guys, but it's not going to be a rotation. You're going to see the older guys play, and they'll play basically until it's time for the younger guys to start getting reps because the lead is big enough. So you'll see some young guys play in this game if things go right, but not because they're rotating, more because they're trying to get those guys reps to, give them experience because they're going to be playing next year some. So simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 99 to 1% deal with Gimmel and Asante all year unless something happens on the injury front. Greg, as far as the defensive secondary, I mean, we haven't talked about them that much this week because I thought they were pretty solid against Virginia Tech. Where are areas of improvement there from week 1 to week 2 for Jay Bateman's group and Dre Bly's group? I mean, Tony Grimes is what he is, and Carolina put those guys on an island several times, but how did they improve from Labor Day weekend to this weekend?
Well, I think the key person there, and he kind of told us himself Tuesday, is for as much as we saw out of Jacarius Conley that you like, he didn't think he played especially well. He had some tackling issues. I think coverage was a problem at times, and it's his first game back there at safety. So I think he especially will grow and learn from how he played on Friday night. But yeah, I mean, you have to like what you saw at cornerback. The fact Storm Duck did not play, he's just had such an odd last year. For this defense to really be as good as they can be, he needs to be back so they can give Grimes and McMichael some more rest without any kind of drop off. That'd be significant. But I mean, Trey Morrison is a kid that I think people have discounted him just year over year, and you kind of think, yeah, well, you know what? He's a small guy. He's not gonna. This is going to be a year that he kind of takes the back seat. And I thought he played well on Friday night. So they've got a very solid core back there. And I think Jay Bateman has done a good job with that group. And that's going to be, those guys are the reason that he can be more creative up front. And Jason did a good job highlighting that on one of his film breakdowns. If you got guys that you trust that on the edge and you can put them on an island, you have a ton of flexibility with whatever you want to call on the inside. And I think we saw that a little bit on Friday. We'll see more of it in the weeks to come.
Let me ask a question that somebody asked on the message board, and I asked you this, Jason. I heard this on another podcast, but why are adjustments mostly made at halftime? Why is halftime when adjustments are made for, say, Jay Bateman or coordinators and not on the fly more often than not? How does that work?
Well, first of all, I don't think that's true. So
I just asked the questions.
Yeah, I don't think that's actually true. There are adjustments between every drive and even sometimes during drives. And so, that's, I mean, how often do you look on the sideline and you see a coach with a whiteboard that's working with his guys on this or that? I mean, it's all the time. There are adjustments being made constantly through the game. Now, periodically, if a team comes in with some tendencies that they've shown in the past that you've prepared the majority of that you've done the majority of your preparation for, and then they just are repeatedly breaking those tendencies, or they're using different formation groups and that sort of thing, then what halftime allows you to do is it allows you to get your whole defense together or your entire position groups together after the coaches have spent 5 minutes or so getting a chance to talk and, go through what we need to do, to be able to say, okay, here are some big picture things that we need to get done. And here's some details that are going to go a long way to getting this fixed, to make sure that everything is coordinated together in a way that you really don't have the opportunity to do as much on the sideline on the fly, because you don't have everybody there. I mean, okay, the offense is out there for 4 plays. You had a chance to talk to your guys for about 2.5 minutes, and you worked with them on the whiteboard as quick as you could, but you're still basically doing what you've done. At the half, you can go over a few more things and sort of hammer some things home that you're not able to do to the same degree on the sideline. But again, like I said, there are adjustments that are happening every drive, even play to play, that are constantly happening. Those adjustments aren't always noticed. And oftentimes what will happen is you'll see adjustments that'll finally take shape when the offensive side is finally out of its script, which might be 3 drives in. And then by about the middle of the second quarter, you're starting to see these teams they've made their adjustments and they're settled in, but it just kind of gets lost that, well, those are the last, 2 drives of the half. And they just kind of get ignored and lumped in with the second half stuff. And you think, well, they made the adjustment in halftime. So it's a little bit of, it doesn't just happen at halftime, and a little bit of what adjustments you can make. You can make bigger adjustments and be more confident in the adjustments that you make because of the extra time that you get at halftime. So it's kind of a both and a neither nor.
Greg Barnes, another question off social media. How many quarterbacks play this week?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, it's got to be 2, right? Unless it's just a complete blowout.
How many quarterbacks need to play this week?
Well, 3 probably. I mean, it'll be interesting. I saw Jason flash up 3 fingers there. You get into the fourth quarter, do you just alternate series? Is that the plan, Jason, do you think?
It depends on where you think these players are on the pecking order. If you feel like Criswell or May has been significantly better than the other guy, then maybe you give him 2 or 3 drives before you give the other guy a drive. It's possible that they feel like May is far enough behind, just being, further being a year behind in the system, that they say, well, we need to make sure that Criswell gets enough reps that if Sam goes down, he's going to be the next guy. So he's got to get at least 3 drives, once we're up by this amount, if possible. And so, maybe he takes his 3 drives, and then you give May his first action where, he steps in and hands it off in the final drive or 2, maybe. But if you feel like they're real close, then, a lot depends on when you actually start to feel like you can make that substitution. I mean, if you're up 49-0 in the middle of the third quarter, maybe you go ahead and you make that swap right there. But if you're only, if you're still trying to hammer some things out offensively, if you're really just still trying to get Sam Howell some rhythm with his receivers, and you're trying to get those guys confident so that when you go to the next game, which is going to be more of a fight, and you're going to have those guys winning those battles, catching from Howell, and maybe it's only 27-7 or something like that in the middle of the third quarter, then maybe you have Howell go through, the early fourth quarter. And in which case you might only have 2-3 drives to give. And in that context, maybe you've decided this is going to be the guy that would most likely step in if Howell gets hurt. He's going to get a couple drives, and that's that. So it depends a little bit on how quickly you're able to build a lead, provided you're able to do that, things go well, and how quick and where you actually think the young guys are in relation to one another. And you just kind of, this is the discussion that you're having as staff during the week, is you're saying, okay, let's game plan this. If we're up by this much and things are starting to look good, when do we make the change? And how many drives do we try to get each guy and all this? How do we prepare for that? And the answer to that is that the coaching staff doesn't know. They're going to have some contingencies in place depending on those factors that I just mentioned.
Greg, last question before we get to the prediction portion is, will this game tell me who my favorite player is? And I hate this. I feed it and I hate it. I had people ask me this crap at Virginia Tech. Like at Virginia Tech asking me, thank you, Buck. I know you're listening. Thank you, Buck Sanders, for hanging the backup quarterback albatross.
I've got bad news. I don't think it's going to be this week. I think it's coming. But I don't think it's going to be this week. I wanted to share a few notes about rotation, if we're good with that defensive wise. We've talked a lot about the need for North Carolina to rely more on defensive players and their talent and building depth and all those things that we've heard Mack Brown talk about. Jason's point about the linebackers there was valid. But if you look about just the entire defense, I went back and looked at the South Carolina game in 2019, which had 64 defensive snaps. The game on Friday night only had 63. So very similar, both competitive games to the last minute. And in 2019, there were 14 Tar Heels who played at least 12 defensive snaps. On Friday night, 19 played at least 12. It's a 35% increase. That's pretty solid. 2019, 7 players played 87% of potential snaps. And on Friday night, only 4 played more than 85%. So you're seeing there the growth in the roster. You're seeing there the development and the trust and being able to rotate more guys. And I know some fans probably watched the game and said, well, we didn't see Keyshawn Silver. We didn't see a lot of these other guys that we've heard about. Why aren't they rotating more? Well, they are. And a lot of these guys are getting, a lot more snaps. We talked the other night, Tommy, Raymond Vahasek got 41 snaps. Pretty good for your starting nose tackle when there's 63 snaps in the game. So as this season goes along and as some of these young guys get in and get 5 snaps here, 10 snaps there, their minutes will increase provided they continue to get better. And so you'll see even more guys be able to play. But at the end of the day, you got to ride your horses. And so if Vahasek's who they think is their best nose tackle, he's going to continue to see a lot of snaps. And that's just kind of how it works out. You just have more options. You have more guys to look at and say, okay, well, Ritzy, he's come on. We think he's ready to maybe take 25 snaps. Maybe we get to that Miami game and he's seeing a lot more action. But Jay Bateman's doing a better job building that depth. He's doing a better job getting those guys into the game. And that's going to pay off not only this year, not only this week, next week, but into the future where he's going to have a lot of options.
And I'm going to add one more thing here. If you look at those 4 players who played 60 or more snaps in this game, what positions were they?
Inside linebacker and corners.
2 linebackers, 1 corner, and Conley at safety. The thing about those positions is those are positions where you're generally going to want your dudes to not come off the field. And guess what? That's great. Whereas if you look at the prior years, you look a couple of years ago, the guys that couldn't come off the field were the guys up front because they didn't have anybody to substitute for those guys. And where you want to rotate the most is in the trenches because your guys are going to get exhausted, get gassed from just getting leaned on. And that's when you start to give up runs and not be able to get pressure on the quarterback late in games and that sort of thing. They're able to rotate at the most important spots where you need to rotate. And then they're not rotating as much as at the spots where if you've got a dude, you don't rotate. Yep. I mean, do you really want Tony Grimes coming off the field? I don't think so. So he played 63 snaps. Go figure. Right? That guy, you don't want to rotate him off. And I should say, by the way, Day-Day Hollins played a good football game. when he came in and, he played 20 snaps, I think it was 22 snaps. I'm looking at it now, coming in for Kyler McMichael, rotating in there. And I thought Hollins played well when he came in. So overall, that's another good sign that you've got really the fourth corner in the rotation once Duck is back, coming in and being able to play well.
One of the most fascinating stats from 2 years ago is, and it's ballparking a bit, but like Strobridge and Crawford played double the number of snaps that Clemson's starting 2 defensive tackles did. Carolina's getting there. They ain't there yet.
Well, Clemson starters, I think that year averaged something like 41 or 42 snaps per game.
Yeah, I think.
How many did Vlasic have this game?
41. Yeah.
40. Oh, interesting, huh?
Getting there. Let's talk about some predictions here on the Game Plan Podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Don't forget us, Inside Carolina Live in the Bowls lot before the game, and then the post-game show sponsored by Blue Shark with Ross Martin and Sean Drone. Greg Barnes, I'll let you go first. Predictions, expectations, accomplishments. What needs to happen for Carolina on Saturday night to come away in a good spot?
I think this is a good game for North Carolina. Georgia State's had some success. They won a bowl game last year, returned 20 starters from that team that went 6-4. They got an aggressive defense. They've got a dual threat quarterback who's pretty good. Got a really good running back. So this is going to test North Carolina. I think that's what they need. But North Carolina is a 4-touchdown favorite for a reason. I think the offense and Sam Howell are going to bounce back and have a lot of success. So I've got North Carolina winning this one 49-14.
49-14 for Greg Barnes. Where are you going, Jason? 48-16, 48-15?
No, I think the defense might have a little bit more success than 14 points. I'm going to go with a little bit fewer points scored. I mean, they did give up 43 to Army, so but they were missing 5 starters, and including some of their better players there. So I'm going to go with 44 to 45 to 10. North Carolina in this game. And I think that the key here is Carolina's defense being able to limit the running game and really forcing Georgia State to throw the football when they don't necessarily want to, when they're off schedule. And I think that'll make a big difference. And I think the defense is starting to turn a corner, and I expect to see that take all the more shape in this game.
Greg Barnes, Sam Howell, over under 4 touchdowns.
Over under?
Mm-hmm. You can
I
push.
mean, yeah, I'll push. How's that?
Push.
I'm going with a push as well.
Ty Chandler, 100 yards.
Under,
yeah. Josh Downs, how many yards, Tommy?
150. 150 and 2 touchdowns.
Are we talking total or receiving?
I'll say receiving, because they'll do that little toss sweep thing.
Hey, Tommy, here's a little trivia quiz. I mentioned the South Carolina game in 2015. Why is South Carolina relevant this week?
Somebody coaching something or another.
Georgia State's head coach Sean Elliott took over for Steve Spurrier in 2015.
Yep, he was an interim coach there.
He's a good coach.
And it's interesting.
App State guy.
Yeah, and Mack had Ty Chandler talk to the team to say, look, these boys beat us at Tennessee. Is that – no, that was Florida that was blocking the same – 2 Florida guys that were blocking each other. That was against Georgia Southern, though. I get my wrong directional schools. I'll save my prediction for Inside Carolina Live from the Bowls lot. I believe we're 4:30 to 6:30 in the Bowls lot. So if you listen to this, come out and join us. Get some swag, visit, get the question answered. If you get lucky, maybe get on air, talk to Joey and myself. Post game with Ross Martin, Sean John, like I mentioned, sponsored by Blue Shark. This has been sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. That's Jason Staples, the other ball guy, Greg Barnes with the head of hair that we all wish we could have.
Not me.
Gentlemen, I'm not going there. It's been fun, boys. We'll get out of here now. Laters.